what steps are being taken to reduce our gun crime?
On the issue of gun violence basically is a phenomenon that means that our little gangsters who had machetes put the machetes down and took up guns. Many of the serious perpetrators are incarcerated. Our biggest task now is to deal with the young people who are coming up, those in the middle schools. We have a strategy with the Anti-Agency Gang Task Force and with the Education Department to monitor these youngsters that are coming up right now, and we've put in strategies in the school to early identification and to work with each individual and their families to make sure they don't get a gun and start to pull the trigger. But it's all of our tasks. And I want everybody to understand, and I think you must be getting it now, that it's not just the police problem, not just the government's problem, it's everybody's problem. There are children, there are nephews, and our families. And I believe now that the community is getting on board in dealing with what we call gun crime. I'll say this, we are getting in many of the handguns. We've actually just found a gun, very old gun, but alarmingly there was brand new ammunition in it, which means that somebody is getting ammunition in. But the fact that it was such an old piece of equipment tells us that there aren't that many guns. So I think that the gun violence that we see will abate, and you don't have to trust me, trust the records, trust the statistics. We are getting a handle on it going forward. Recently, the Premier put together a 3-person committee. Myself, Minister Blakeney from Social Assistance and Child and Family Services, and the Minister of Education. We sit down regularly, once a week at least, to deal with issues around education. We found that with early childhood development, the early childhood development program that identifies children as young as 2, we assess them, appraise them, look at their risk, and we found that 4% of our community is at risk with these children. Some who don't get screening, it's about 2%, and the other 2% that are identified as dysfunctional, we've started to work with them, and the 2% that we don't normally see until they get into the system at 5, we're trying to identify. So we're making the childhood assessment mandatory, starting at age 2, and we're going to work with each child individually as they come up through the system. We've also put in place a strategy to look back at those people who have actually been incarcerated and identified, the gunmen and all the rest, to track back to see where they went off the rails. So we're doing in fact, the lady's here in front of me, who's actually doing that study to give us a historical perspective of how those children got into trouble, so that we can now work with Child and Family Services, counselors, to make sure that we don't repeat those problems going forward with the young generation coming up. Okay?